Okay, we're connected. Unmute myself. Hello there, everyone, and welcome to this second webinar for Werkman Hoof Care. First one you may have seen before, how to use Werkman BLACK. This is what we're going to talk about tonight. My name is Jonathan Nunn, and we're going to talk about the use of Werkman BLACK more in detail. If you didn't see the last webinar, we'll cover some of the aspects that we talked about in the first webinar for Werkman Hoof Care. You can catch up with that one on YouTube via the Werkman website. So then we'll begin. So what we're going to talk about in this presentation is how to measure, important things to consider when we use the device, when we use Werkman BLACK. I like to use a case study. So we're going to talk about a horse called MARKO that I've been shoeing for 2 years, and I've been measuring him every time with BLACK. So we're going to use MARKO as a case study. We'll talk about stride patterns, stride intervals and footfalls, and what can we see and what can we relate to that with our experience, with our experienced eye. And also, as farriers, what influence do we have? So I know that I can influence a great deal the performance and the well-being of the horse and the comfort level in that horse. So we're going to talk about what influence do we have as farriers, and how can we justify that and validate that as well. And also we're going to talk about the ring of workman in detail. This is a new new aspect that was introduced in April, and it's a really useful and cool part of the Werkman BLACK system and the device. So an overview of what we can do with BLACK. We can quantify and compare landing, mid-stance, breakover, swing phase, and timings and duration. BLACK measures at 1140 Hertz. It's a high-speed sensor. The technology in these sensors is very new. So 1140 Hertz, that's 1140 samples per second, which is much faster than our eye. As we discussed in the previous presentation, our eye measures at about 25 Hertz. Chat's open if you have any questions. I can't see the chat, but feel free to ask questions on chat, and Werkman team are online as well. They'll answer any questions with chat. But at the end, if we can leave questions till the end, and we'll open audio and talk about the aspects of any questions at the end. So also, what else can we measure? Footfalls, breakover, landing patterns, landing zones, the swing phase, the stance phase, stride patterns, stride elevation, stride lengths, and limb flight patterns, currently of front feet. The sensors are capable and will be capable, and that's something we will see in the future, is sensors that can measure the hind feet as well. So currently tonight we're talking about front feet, and the measurements up to now, the device can measure front feet, and it's calibrated to measure front feet. This is the kit if you've not seen it before. So this is the sensor. The clever part, inside this sensor is an electronic gyroscope, an accelerometer, high-speed accelerometer, and these sensors can measure minute movements and vibration. They can measure up to 200 G, so they can measure impact as well. We have a remote control. So this is the sensor. Here's the sensor. really small and very lightweight. That affixes with Velcro. We're going to talk about the fixing the sensors to the hoof during this presentation as well. We also have the remote control. This is all come in a suitcase and it's charged wirelessly. As you can see here, the remote control in the suitcase all charges wirelessly, and the sensors turn on and off wirelessly. There's no switches, there's a button on the remote control in the center. You see the Werkman logo is the on-off switch for the remote control. So this is all charged internally with a tablet. There's a tablet as well. Inside the suitcase, we have an internal battery which can carry charge for many days as well. So the sensors will charge from the internal battery. So it doesn't need to be charged every day. So your internal battery power will cover for quite a few days. As an on-off switch as well for the internal battery, or if you're traveling, if you need to turn the battery off, you can turn the suitcase battery off, so all of the electronics are then turned off. What I do for my daily use, I turn the switch off, so everything's off. I turn it on in the morning when I know I'm going to measure some horses. I leave the tablet turned off. So if you already own a device, if you already own Werkman BLACK, and you're having issues with the battery being flat when you go to it, it's usually because you've left a tablet on. So I'd recommend in between measurements, turn the tablet off and probably turn the suitcase off until you know you're going to measure. We apply the sensors with Velcro, small Velcro sticky pads. So on the back of the Velcro is a really sticky back. So the sensors fix. Sensors also have Velcro on the back. So there's a really strong bond to the hoof wall. I'd recommend that you sand the hoof wall slightly. Any dirt or debris or damp, either a smooth file or sand with a sanding pad to clean the area before you put the sticky Velcro on. What then we try and do is affix the sticky Velcro just below the hairline, just below the skin of the coronary band, so below the periopal. Then the sensor affixes to the sticky Velcro pad in line with the long axis, so as much in line as possible with the long axis of the limb, and in the center toe as well. These sensors they will know when they're not properly affixed. So if you get a bad angle measurement, or if any of you have experienced a measurement that's not been as you expected, maybe the angle measurement hasn't read. Sometimes if the sensor is skewed or not fixed straight in line with the limb, then this can affect the measurement. So then apply the sensor and turn the sensor on. Again, with the function button in the center, I'll show you how easy it is. So we have a green light flashing, activate the sensor. Then again, wirelessly, we can, there we go. So then we have a sensor light saying the left-hand sensor's turned on. So when we've got two function buttons, but as you can see, the remote control has 4 lights. So in time, when the system's ready to upgrade to 4 sensors, then there's no changes need to be made. So this system, as it stands at the moment, it will evolve, and it's ready to accept the technology that's going to come in the future as well. So to perform a measurement, so once we've turned both sensors on, again, the on-off switch is in the top left-hand corner of the sensor, just here, and it's, like I said, it's all wireless. So then when we have green lights flashing, Then we're ready to perform a measurement. You need to be near to the horse to begin the measurement, so as close as possible, a couple of meters ideally. The sensors will, once activated, they will continue to measure for approximately 10 or 11 minutes. There's a great deal of data then that you'll have to upload, so it will take a long time to upload that data. We recommend at least 20 strides, so 25 to 30 strides would be ideal in a straight line walk and trot. But once the sensors are activated, even if you go out of range of the remote control, they will still continue to measure. Often I'll keep the sensor in my hand rather than put it in my pocket, then you don't risk touching the function button. So once I've activated the sensor and the measurement begins, then I try not to touch the sensor button, the on-off switch on the remote control. So to perform a measurement, one press and the green lights will flash as you see. So that sensor is measuring right now. Perform a measurement, press again, green lights don't flash in quick succession, they flash as normal. So now that sensor has stored the measurement, the movement of the horse. It's as easy as that. Then we upload to the tablet, simple upload again, press and hold the function button for 3 seconds and lights will turn blue, as you see, and then we're actively uploading to the tablet. As you can see, it's quick and easy. As in most of my presentations, I like to use a case study. Marko came to us at Pool House Equine Clinic as a lameness case in October 2018. I'd just been given a suitcase, given Werkman BLACK to start to use on some of the horses and measure horses that I trim and shoe. So Marko came to the vet clinic with a lameness, sudden onset of lameness. He's a little eventer type, and we'll discuss Marko throughout this presentation. We'll skip in and out and use Marko as an example and some of his measurements. I've shod Marko for quite some time, and every time he's shod every 5 weeks, and every time, whenever I can, we measure him with Werkman BLACK. So Marko's owner, she's pretty sure she knew the time when he injured his ligament. He got a very specific injury at the vet clinic where I work. I do lameness referrals cases. They use a lot of MRI. So some of the cases that we have is really useful to use Werkman BLACK alongside a diagnosis, as in Marko's case. He had a specific injury, lateral collateral ligament, and as you can see, his owner was pretty sure this was the time when he did most of the injury to his ligament. As you can see, he did a stumble, and this is what we see. We see this quite a lot, I have to say, with ligament injuries. Often owners can pinpoint the specific time when a horse is injured. There may be a predisposition to an injury, as in Marko's case. I think his conformation probably led towards a predisposition to that occurring. So in October 2018, Marko came to see us. He had MRI. So this is the ligament. For those of you who haven't seen, the position of the distal lateral collateral ligament of the DIP joint. This is a model that we mocked up just to show the sort of injuries that can occur to this ligament. I believe, talking to the MRI readers, that this area here is often the area that they see that's gets injured. You know, if there's any tears in the ligament, swelling in the ligament, it's often in this area here. And I think you can see the reason I wanted to mock up this model was to show exactly that. You know, when you see this under extension, you can see that quite nicely. Is it any wonder that this ligament sometimes through overextension can be injured? This is the first shoe-in of Marko. As you can see, the his left fore lame. He had some insignificant injuries, slight injuries as well in the right fore as well. But the main point of injury was the distal lateral collateral ligament. During the first case shoeings, when we're referred cases, I use a spider plate for the early remedial shoeing. Why, you may ask? Stability. You know, I can stabilize the hoof, the hoof capsule. I can, without any frog pressure, extreme frog pressure from the plate. I usually have neutral frog pressure, and then I use either dental impression material or a pour-in pack as well to help stabilize the coffin joint, because that's what we're dealing with here, is an injury that's occurred through instability in the coffin joint. Marko, as you can see, has a slight deviation of the hoof capsule. Overset radius is a bit offset in the radius. His knee, I would say, as a foal, he's probably developed this way. So there's really not an extreme amount I do different to try and alter this limb. And I haven't during the shoeing with Marko, every shoeing, we try and balance the foot to the limb, but I don't believe an extension on an athletic horse like this is going to make a lot of difference to him in the long run. So stability of the coffin joint was the important thing, and to start the healing process of a ligament. Marko's actually undergone PRP treatment of the distal collateral ligament as well, the lateral distal collateral ligament. So in this, it's plasma-rich platelets. So he's undergone a pioneering, you may have heard of PRP as a treatment. So he's making good progress, and he was one of the first horses that attended the clinic that the attending vets decided to use PRP. So as you can see, just click this on, should have 4. This was Marko's second visit maybe, and you can see from movement, this is all in slow-mo, you can see the deviation in that left fore, in the hoof capsule, an inward deviation. When we first saw Marko, that was evident, but also the foot imbalance. You know, he's a strong little horse, he grows a lot of foot, so his shoeing intervals have to be within 4 to 5 weeks to maintain good balance, and that's something I recommend to my clients and to horses that we're treating, that we keep the shoeing intervals fairly tight, you know, so I can maintain good balance. This is the part I find clients can really relate this to. I show them this animation screen of Black, so you can see here, clients really like this part, you know, they can really relate that to the horse's movement. I find it's a really good opening screen when a client doesn't fully understand what you're going to do, and then you say, well, this is going to animate the strides of your horse, so we can look more in detail. Actually, the numbers, as we'll go into during this presentation, the numbers are the part that we really get the most from. So we're going to talk about the stride phases and the stride timeline. So all of these stride phases add up into the stride, what we call the stride timeline. Mid-stance, breakover, swing and landing. We're going to come back to this and talk about the stride phases. These are the database averages. So average walk, most horses walk at a speed of 1.5 meters per second, 5.4 kilometers per hour in walk. Mid-stance in milliseconds, average database averages 446. Breakover in milliseconds, 149 milliseconds. Swing, 434 milliseconds. Landing, we see an average of 22 milliseconds. I've seen, as you may have seen in the last presentation, we used a case study with Charlie. His landings were 50 milliseconds. That's really high. When you think of a breakover duration in trot, let's say 65 milliseconds, landings really shouldn't be. I'm starting to get concerned if I see landings that are 35 milliseconds or 30 even. You know, it's getting quite high. Average trot, 3.17 meters per second or 11.4 kilometers per hour. That depends per horse, of course, and also handlers as well. As I discussed before, it's a really good idea to use the same handlers before and after you trot up horses. Even on a daily basis, if you weren't measuring horses with Werkman BLACK, I would say it's good practice to use the same handler, because some handlers will trot, will run at a slightly different speed or slightly slower. So average trot, mid-stance 163 milliseconds, breakover 65 milliseconds, obviously a bit quicker than walk. Swing phase 414 milliseconds, landing about 18 milliseconds. Stride duration 1.2 seconds, average trot 0.73 seconds. Relative stance time, and this is all things that we can see in the numbers and the breakdown of Werkman BLACK, and we can discuss this in this presentation. We'll cover this some more. Relative stance time 64%, average walk, average trot 44%. So this is all database averages so far. So let's talk about the breakover and what we understand about breakover. Sometimes we think we know a great deal about breakover and we know we can influence breakover as farriers, and it's probably one of the things that we get taught the most about how we can influence breakover. Different shoes, different toes, whether we in a barefoot situation, how we can influence breakover. So primary breakover is heel off. So the first point of breakover, so when the heel starts to lift from the ground, primary breakover. Secondary breakover, as the foot moves through into the final breakover, where the foot then finally leaves the ground, the last point of the hoof to leave the ground. So again, this breakover phase, you know, it has timings that we know we can influence. And again, we're going to talk some more about the ring of workman, and this picture on the right hand side is an overview of the ring of workman. The triangle pointed in the ring of workman indicates the start of breakover. The breakover starts when the heel of the hoof is 0.5 degrees off the ground. So that's when the sensors will start to measure breakover and put it into perspective. We think we know a lot about foot balance. I'm forever being taught new things. I've been a farrier for 34 years and I still learn every day from a huge variation of people about foot balance. We learn a lot about foot balance from 2D animation, 2D pictures. these kind of pictures, we think very much in 2 dimensions. You know, foot balance is very much 3-dimensional. But because we've learned these kind of textbook images, we really do think that way, you know. And also X-ray radiograph images, this is the ideal, you know. Is every foot like this? From what I see on a day-to-day basis, I'd love to say yes, but I have to say that, you know, nothing's perfect, and I'm yet to find a perfect horse. So, you know, this is what we're working on: hoof past an axis, long axis ideals, the T-square, however you adopt the T-square, and shoeing around the coffin joint. I think we'll understand about shoeing around the coffin joint, center of rotation, and proportional balance as well. And we need guidelines. We need to understand this proportional balance and what the ideals are. This is what can happen, and what often does happen when we have an imbalance or incorrect balance. We'll have all seen X-rays that look similar to this. So on the diagram, correct balance or ideal balance. I'm not sure if correct is the right word, but ideal, and less than ideal, incorrect balance. So we know that will influence weight bearing and also have an impact on the joints. As you can see in this radiograph, this extreme imbalance will obviously have an influence on not only the impact, but also the joint spaces are going to suffer as a result of this imbalance of the hoof. So it's really important to understand this as farriers from a very early age. This is instilled in our training to optimize balance and make sure that it's as good as we can get it on the day. As we know, an imbalance will affect hoof landing, and if we covered some of this in the last presentation as well, about hoof landing, and we can talk some more about this during this presentation. So landing is the reverse triangle, just here, as you can see on the ring of Werkman. The initial contact between the hoof and the surface is the start of landing. This is shown with a triangle. The ring where the landing occurred is shown with a semicircle. So again, we'll go into this in more detail, but an overview of what we're looking at as well is we know that hoof balance can affect hoof landings. Hoof imbalance can affect hoof landings. And again, we're often taught that the initial impact, the initial whatever part of the foot hits the ground first, is concussion, and there's a high degree of impact. There's slide and stop. There's a point at which the hoof is flat on the ground, and there's an element of slide towards braking, and then force. We know from measurements and now from modern research that actually the greatest amount of force is during the mid stance and support phase. Then we have, as the horse's leg moves over the weight bearing limb, then we have propulsion and push off. As many now discuss this term, the propulsion phase begins to start to push off as well. And we see that especially with hind feet. As we know, the propulsion often comes from the hind feet. And I see this a lot in lameness cases that we see at the clinic. When there's a front foot lameness, there's often a hind foot disproportion as well. So a lameness or something's going wrong with the hind feet because the horses don't want to engage their hind end. So in the ring of Werkman, the diamond is when the hoof is located completely on the ground and the landing phase has ended. So the sensors will know when the hoof has stopped moving and during mid stance. So this is a lot of what we're going to talk about during this webinar is fact-based research, and Werkman Hoof Care have worked alongside Jenny Hagen at Leipzig University as well. And Jenny's currently validating a lot of the testing with Werkman BLACK. She's doing some research and fact-based research and studies to validate the system. So a lot of what we see, the work that Jenny's done is with pressure mats, whereas Werkman BLACK is the sensors is movement. So the ring of Werkman is movement alone. So don't be confused with the ring of Werkman being a pressure plate. You know, it is movement, and it can sense minute movements. So Jenny's worked along with Werkman Hoof Care for quite some time, and at the moment she's validating a lot of the data. But what we can do here, and what you'll see by the end of this webinar, hopefully, is that we can do our own studies to show how we can influence and change horses with positive effect. So this is some of the raw data, an example of some of the raw data, and a graph to show just the differences that we've made. This was a study was done at Talbot in the Netherlands with the system. So in the blue line is barefoot after trimming, and as you can see, mid stance to breakover, barefoot with a 5-degree wedge on the yellow line, as you can see here, this yellow line, and the green line, the red line, sorry, is standard warrior toe clip, shod with a standard warrior toe clip. So we can see from this graph in walk that there's a great deal of difference between a barefoot horse, a 5-degree heel wedge, bilateral heel wedge, or a standard shoe. So we know we can influence a great deal during landing to mid stance and the swing phase. The same data comparison in trot, and again similar patterns. We see a great deal of difference in the peak. Again, the blue line is barefoot, the yellow line is a 5-degree heel wedge bilaterally, and the red line is the standard warrior toe clip. So it's very evident that there's a big difference in shoeing and trimming styles if we put a wedge or a barefoot even. I like to measure a lot of the horses that I shoe. If they've got an extremely long toe before I measure them with Werkman BLACK, I'll take the shoes off, do a conservative trim, and then do a barefoot measurement, because I think that baseline measurement is really important. So here we see on the timings chart what we just saw there. So this is landing, this is mid stance, and this is breakover. So this triangle here is breakover. Again, warrior toe clip, mid stance to breakover, barefoot, landing, mid stance to breakover. This is one horse. So all of this data, that Jenny's compiling many studies over many different horses. So we will know some of the effects of some of these different shoe types, as she's done with the pressure plate, and how that can affect the movement of the horse. You may say, oh well, breakover looks shorter on the barefoot. That's a question that you can discuss. If you measure horses with Werkman BLACK, you will see that sometimes lame horses don't necessarily have a long duration of breakover. I've measured quite a few lame horses, and that's, again, we'll cover some of Marco's early measurements. Sometimes breakover can be short and snappy on a lame horse. as we can see here, MARKO's comparison, we compared and reviewed from October 2018 to February 2020. So MARKO was lame, left 4, as you can see, in walk. And this was MARKO's measurement, as we just discussed in the footfalls graph in the previous slide. This is a really good overview and a really good way to, first of all, show your client or yourself to indicate if there's something, a discrepancy that you need to look at in the timings table. So I use the footfalls graph a great deal at the beginning, so I can give myself a quick overview before I go to the numbers. So as you can see, if you look at the timings table and think back to the averages that we looked at earlier on, landings not too bad, not too much differences there. Swing, phase, breakover, big difference. Mid stance, yeah, it's not as much of a significant difference, but it's still a difference that we could do something about. So February 2020, as you can see, again, look at the stride pattern, more symmetry. Again, look at the mid stance here, more stride symmetry in the footfalls graph, and the numbers here, 0, 0, 0. And I've not measured many horses that have had all the zeros are right along the line, but again, landings 14, 16. So there's a pretty good result here. We talked a little bit about landings earlier on. If we were to take a general overview of averages and average landings, this to me, I'm not alarmed by heel landing. I'd say landing between, if you look at a clock face and imagine this as a clock face between 4 and 5 or 7 and 8 respectively, anything between 2 and 5 is within the normal range laterally. Emphasize that. We're gonna the next slide will demonstrate that as well. Durations 15 to 20 milliseconds, averages, that's generally what we see. So each horse has had its own specific habits of landing pattern. We see that I've measured over 300 horses, probably there's well over 600 measurements on my tablet, and landings vary a great deal. I used to think when we discussed this with farriers, and we said, oh yeah, hey, you know, how do you think horses should land? Flat level? That's what we thought. We think we knew that horses should land flat level, but actually when we look at this in detail and we can quantify this with Werkman BLACK, many horses are landing slightly laterally, but the duration of landings can be really short, so we don't actually see it with our eye. You know, if it's below 15 milliseconds, it's too fast for us to see. So we know not many horses actually land with an even distribution. I find a lot of young horses land very much distributed throughout the whole area, but as horses get more mature and older, they tend to have concentrated landing zones, whether that's due to bony changes or hardening of the joints, you know, but that's discussion that's open for review. So landing locations, this is the overview of the landing locations. Each red dot here is a landing spot. So this sensor can pick up every time that foot touches the ground, and what area of the hoof touches the ground first. So hoof landing patterns, this is what, again, flat landing, I don't see that all that often, but then again, I'm measuring a lot of lame horses. But landing flat, then we'll get this quite even distribution. And like I said, I see this a lot in young horses, 4 or 5-year-olds just come into work. I tend to, in my view, I see this commonly in young horses that are sound and not yet developed any injuries. Lateral heel landing, yeah, I'd say that's the number one. That's what I see most normal horses, standard lateral heel landing. Lateral toe landing, less common, but as a farrier, in my experience, I would say lateral toe landing, yeah, it's one to be aware of. Can you influence it? I find it difficult on the modern sport horse. If they land lateral toe, sometimes we need to think about softening this area of landing if it's lateral toe and we have a long duration of landing. So do we need to do anything about it? It's probably normal for that horse. Medial heel landing, in my experience, as a farrier, medial heel landing is the one to watch out for. That this is the one that can cause lameness if not addressed. So medial heel landing, I think the force through the medial heel is direct, and the force and concussion, the impact, takes its toll on the medial heel. If you shoe hunters that land medial heel, you're guaranteed some corns at the end of the season. So this is a general overview of hoof landing patterns. So this is MARKO as a comparison. We talked about some of the measurements before, and barefoot measurements. So landings in the ring of workmen. This is MARKO's landing patterns before shoeing, and this is the ring of workmen. And often, as you can see, this is the exact reflection of this measurement in the ring of workmen. So first point of impact, heel landing, into mid stance, break over. You can see that. So this was unshod in walk, MARKO unshod in walk. And again, as I said earlier on, we know we can influence the horse with shoeing or not shoeing, unshod horses. We know that things change. I'm becoming more and more aware of this. The more horses I measure from shod to unshod, there's a dramatic change, and it's not. Don't be misled by this as a negative or a positive. Sometimes it's muscle memory, and I think if we measure a horse directly after we've removed shoes, the horse still thinks it has a shoe on the end of the foot. So it's good practice to remeasure. If there's a severe imbalance and you want to get a good overview of what that horse's normal is, take the shoes off, leave the shoes off for a few hours or a day even, and go back the next day and remeasure. And I'm pretty sure that you'll get a different result to what you would if you measured straight after. So muscle memory plays a big part in this. So MARKO unshod in walk, and you can see, we'll cycle back to the previous slide. This is significant, so MARKO's landings in walk and the ring of workmen can show us heel first landing and then shoes off, same day, shoes removed, landings have changed, and then suddenly MARKO's lateral toe landing or toe landing as well. MARKO was one of the first horses that made me aware of this, and this was quite some time ago, 2018. And since then, I've measured other horses, and again, it's a good indicator of what normal could be. But when we measured MARKO a week or so after, his landings had actually moved to become more lateral than in this diagram. So the ring of workmen, we'll talk about this in detail. This was MARKO's measurement. He was lame in this measurement. October 2018. So video image. I've superimposed the hoof. You know, when we're talking about angles here, so you see the grid system on the ring of workman equates to 2 degrees. So as you can see, where as we discussed earlier on, the reverse triangle. So we're looking at the angle that the hoof lands. In walk and trot. And what I want you to be aware of here, and this is what I'm starting to see measuring horses from imbalances during lameness to them being sound, and this is what you'll see in this sequence of pictures, is how smooth the transition is from landing to mid stance to breakover. And again, this is new information. We're still getting to grips with understanding the ring of workman and how horses present and how what is normal. But I think this gives you a pretty good overview. This is what we see on a normal screen in the Werkman Black. Again, October 2018. And I truly believe that stability during mid stance is a big factor in helping horses during lameness. So as in my previous webinar with Charlie, we talked about instability during mid stance. And again, the spider plate and my application of any shoe, whether it's a bar shoe, a pad, a spider plate, or a packer, hoof packers, you know, it creates ground stability as well as support for the hoof capsule as well, and the soft tissue. So I truly believe that this can indicate to us, you know, how much instability there is during the mid stance phase. And again, a lot of movement from landing, reverse movement, especially on the left foot. Marko is lame. But this is information that I didn't have when I first measured Marko, because we had the early version of Werkman Black, so we didn't have this application then. I find I'm using the ring of workman a great deal more to help me understand these movements during mid stance. So again, let's go back to this overview. Marko, October 2018, February 2020. So again, the numbers. And this was February 2020. This was some of the more recent. I've measured Marko again since this. This is a good example of what we see and what I talked about earlier on. Marko's sound now. He's back in work. It's been a long road, and he's probably had 12 to 15 months of intense treatment. The first 12 months he wasn't ridden. He's undergone PRP treatment, remedial farriery, constant assessments. But again, I think we can see that stability during mid stance, from landing to mid stance to breakover and away. I'm pleased with the results that we got here. And again, the ring of workman, we've got all those numbers here to refer to as well. Landing, 16 milliseconds, 14 milliseconds. Breakover, exact. Very similar. So again, from landing to mid stance to breakover is a really good example of the difference between lameness and soundness and how it presents on the ring of workman. So Marko's timings in walk in 2020. Again, look at the numbers. The differences in left to right. So mid stance, 1 millisecond difference. Breakover. This isn't staged. It's a drawn off measurement. It's a random measurement that I've drawn off. I have some, as you saw earlier on, with a or 3 zeros, almost no difference from mid-stance breakover to swing phase. So really good result. And the numbers, again, the numbers tell the story. And walk 63% relative stance time. Think back to the averages, and it's pretty much exact on averages. MARKO timings in TROT. Slight difference here, but as a percentage overall of this number, 13 milliseconds is small. And again, breakover, 5 millisecond difference. I'm happy with that. We had a high number here and in mid stance before, and swing phase and landing. So again, think about your database averages, 45%, pretty much exact to what database averages were. So just a summary now. You can share our results. So again, this is a new aspect of Werkman BLACK, and if you haven't yet used it, it's a very useful way of sharing your results. Again, Marco's overview of his measurement. The share button here, you press this and you can share a report to clients or owners, veterinary surgeons or other farriers. And I think as time goes on, we're going to find that we're sharing these results with farriers who are going to be able to understand the measurements as well. So as there's more information published, webinars such as this, the Werkman Hoof Care website can explain a little more. So you can share these results with farriers as well. So press the share button, and this is what you get, a gait analysis report. We'll just cycle through this. So a little explanation, and again, the screenshots, the explanation about footfall, the footfalls graph, an explanation of footfalls graph. So it's really involved, an intricate explanation of footfalls, and it's really helpful to a client. Second part of this, we'll cycle through here. Again, a really interesting overview of the report. The pictures aren't animated so far. The measurement will be still shots. So as you can see, the ring of Werkman will be as we've viewed during this webinar. Some of them weren't animated pictures, but it still gives a client a pretty good idea of what they're dealing with. So just to summarize now, here's MARKO. Pretty happy horse. Still turns his left front in. Not much I can do about that. He's built that way, and I don't intend on trying to dramatically change his conformation, because that's set. Sound, hope you all agree, is a sound horse. And this was a few weeks ago. His owner Amber back on board, enjoying having a horse for the summer. Unfortunately, with the situation we're in at the moment with COVID, she can't go out and enjoy him, but she's obviously enjoying riding him at home and enjoying having a sound horse again. I see too many horses written off by farriers that just say, "Oh yeah, she needs to get a new horse." We're dealing with pinpoint diagnosis now, you know, and I'm fortunate to be involved with excellent veterinary hospital. They employ me as a remedial farrier. You know, we can pinpoint a diagnosis, pinpoint an injury, and we're dealing with very specific things. You know, and our success is due to the diagnostics and the diagnostic imagery that we can employ as well. I'm sure 10, 15 years ago, Marko's lameness would have continued on with little good results because we didn't have a pinpoint. So that's all we got time for tonight, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank Workman Hoof Care for giving me the opportunity to present to you and to work with Werkman BLACK. Poolhouse Equine Hospital for all their hard work with their lameness cases, and some of my biggest teachers are the horses. So Marko's one of those, and without those, I wouldn't be where I am. Raymond, who works for Workman Hoof Care, and has helped me a great deal. So I'd like to acknowledge and thank, and all the people who've let me use horses as case studies and present them in this way. Thanks for listening. And